And in the beginning, what you're going to experience is that you very quickly lose that, and now your attention's off somewhere else. And it's a real mess. In the beginning, it's like, it's desire and greed and lust and resentment and that shit that happened in the past. And you'll be like, whoa, 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 whoa. You'll have a moment of awareness and you'll be like, what the fuck? What's going on? Hey there, guys. How's it going? So I just wanted to share a few notes about meditation that will be really helpful for a lot of you. So with meditation, let's just re-emphasize what the overall sort of big goal is. The goal is to create calm, tranquil, one-pointed focus. And there is this mechanism of the mind that the more one-pointed the mind is, the more blissful and ecstatically alive it becomes. And this is what samadhi is. Samadhi, if you're not familiar with that term, it means unity, or like it's like experienced as a meditative ecstasy or bliss. This is the bliss that you hear about and read about, samadhi. And all it is, it's just a one-pointed mind where you've got an object, let's say this is the breath, and you've got your attention, and it's completely unified with the breath, or with a feeling of loving kindness, or with bodily sensations in the hands and feet, whatever it might be. So that's the goal of meditation. Now, for many people, we sit down and we meditate and we get this invitation to think, right? Through ideas and through our problems and through things that need to be solved. Like many of you have got, busy lives, you've got lots of responsibilities, and there's lots of little problems that need to be solved. But if we put this in the basket of chopping wood, when we think through a problem and we're trying to find a solution, we're chopping wood. When we are in meditation, what we are doing is sharpening our axe. And we want a honed and heavy axe so that when we do swing it, it goes and just cuts right through. For most people, their axe is extremely blunt because their attention is scattered all over the place. And so they're trying to chop, but it just has no power. What we want to do is to create that honed and heavy axe. That's what is required, because that's what's actually going to allow you to problem solve in a maximally efficient way. So let's talk about the problem of meditation. And this is the big problem. This is what most people quit. And this is where, if you persist, you will find the real benefits of meditation that you've been reading about, that you've heard about, everything from deep calm to processing deeper emotional traumas and stored trapped energies in the body. Because as the mind quiet and calms, a lot of that will come to the surface just automatically without you having to go digging for it, which is great. It's not always pleasant in the moment. And then, those states of ecstatic bliss, if you get to that point of one-pointedness. That's no small task, by the way. It took me a long time to get to that point. Although now I'm going to take all of that knowledge and kind of give it to you so you can avoid a lot of the mistakes that I made. And one of the big mistakes I made was trying to think through my problems, like we spoke about. We don't want to chop wood. We want to sharpen our axe. And that is precisely what we're doing when we are coming back into the object and creating one-pointedness. So prepping for meditation, we sit down, we get relaxed, we have a firm commitment and understand that in this moment, I'm not trying to think through my problems. All I'm doing is relaxing out of thinking, because that is going to happen. You are going to think. Your mind is probably pretty untrained at this point. And it depends. Like for some of you, you're further along. And for some of you, you're perhaps at the beginning of this. And both of those are okay. This is a skill, so persist with it. But your mind is relatively untamed and untrained. So you're going to think. And that's completely okay. And do not judge yourself for getting lost in thought. That's ridiculous. That's more of the same energy that actually powers the thoughts in the first place. So all we want to do is we relax, we come in, we got our breath, or maybe it's a feeling of loving kindness. We typically in the beginning use a mixture of the bodily sensations and the breath, which is very potent. And so this is your breath and bodily sensations, and this is your attention. So you're going to bring your attention into your breath. And in the beginning, what you're going to experience is that you very quickly lose that. And now your attention's off somewhere else. And it's a real mess. In the beginning, it's like, it's desire and greed and lust and resentment and that shit that happened in the past. And you'll be like, whoa, 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 whoa. You'll have a moment of awareness and you'll be like, what the fuck? What's going on? And so in that moment, all you need to do is to recognize that you're hooked on to this thinking, and you unhook your attention by relaxing. So you recognize it, you relax, and that unhooks you, and you return to your breath. You can also, after you relax, so you recognize, you relax and unhook, you return to your breath, and then you re-smile. So these are 4 R's. Recognize, relax to unhook, return to your breath, and re-smile. Why do we smile? Because a smile instantly releases dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, but it also creates a pleasant energetic state in the body. So we are creating this association of coming back to the breath with a pleasant feeling. And in the beginning, that might be really subtle. It doesn't matter. Just do it anyway. And you're going to start to build that association. And over time, what you're going to notice is, in the beginning, you sit down, it's like, it's everywhere. It's complete fucking chaos. But you recognize it and you bring it back. And within seconds, recognize, relax, return, re-smile, and now you're back focusing on the breath and bodily sensations. Breath is going in, breath is going out. Pause, breath is going in. And you're back. You're back in the fucking orchestra of the symphony of shit. Of resentment and greed and fear and control and, lust. These are all very common things, guys. You don't need to judge yourself for this. I have been through this. You have to kind of wade through shit swamp in the beginning to get to the other side of a relatively calm state of mind. This is going to be a process. So never judge yourself, never get too down on yourself if you are finding yourself lost in thought more than often. In fact, that is going to be the case. But the more that you do this 4-hour process and you keep coming back and you keep coming back and you keep coming back, you're going to find that after a couple of weeks that things start to look a bit different. So you sit down and you meditate and it's like you're going in and you're kind of with the breath, with your out breath. And then, you get lost in thought, but the time that you spend lost in thought, the power that these mental events have over you is significantly lessened. And as such, you're able to recognize it sooner, relax, return, and re-smile, and spend more time here. And the more time you spend here, generally, the more blissful the mind is going to become, the more powerful, the more grounded, the calmer the mind is going to become. And that's where you're going to get that real fruit of meditation that you've read about and perhaps want quite badly. And you'll get it, but it's a matter of persistence. It really is. It's just like a skill like anything else. And the more time you spend here, the better it begins to feel. And, just to give you a comparison, so I just finished a really nice meditation where my mind was one-pointed and there was bliss. And to give you the sort of before and after, when I was in the beginning stages of meditation versus now, this attention and how it moves. In the beginning, it was like that. It was but when I come to sit now, it's like this, and it's moving around a little bit. It's like, okay, there's a couple of things. In fact, like thinking about recording this video, for example, and there's a few micro movements, but very quickly it settles. And that, not for me, but in general, is a degree of mastery over your mind when you can come in and it's moving around and then it settles on the breath and it just settles, and then maybe it moves a little bit and you just bring it back, and maybe it moves but you just gently bring it back before it has a chance to go off into the whole story and narrative arc. You bring it back, you bring it back, you bring it back, and then when you stay here, what you're going to notice is that there's this sort of radiant energy that starts moving in the body. It starts to sort of go, and that's a really, really good sign. I mean, just a sense of calm and of groundedness and of relative stability. That is a huge milestone in your meditative journey. If you can just get a degree of stability where you're here about 60% of the time, that is going to have a huge knock-on effect in every single area of your life, as long as you keep it. Because, by the way, just like an axe, if you keep using the axe, but you don't sharpen it daily, it will lose its edge. And in the same way, you will lose your capacity to concentrate. You will lose your skill level that you've developed. That is just how it is. You will get rusty, and the rustiness looks like the mind being off in resentment and lust and fear and greed and control and all of the nonsense that creates suffering in our experience. So you need to do this daily. And there's a tendency that when you feel really good, you're like, I don't even need the meditation. I think I'll skip that today. That's the beginning of you going back to a baseline, right? You've probably seen it already, but there's this chart of it's hedonic adaptation. And you have this baseline of happiness, and you kind of go above and you go below, but you always end up in the same place. Like somebody who loses a leg goes right below, but ends up back at their baseline. Somebody who wins the lottery goes right above, but ends up back at their baseline. You always return to this baseline of happiness. As soon as you start skipping meditations because you feel good, you're losing momentum and steam. Your axe is already starting to dull in power. Axe being your mind being the key to everything else. So that's very important. Also, on days where you don't want to meditate because there's a real big emotional thing that you're avoiding feeling, well, those are the days where you benefit the most. Those are the times where you need it the most. You've got, the most access to this big old pain. And typically, if you're avoiding it because there's internal discomfort, you're only ever going to go on your phone and scroll and end up judging yourself, end up in a place where your self-esteem takes a massive hit because you're not operating in alignment with your values, and just waste time. You'll be looking at bullshit that you are not even interested in. Right? You give zero fucks about. But it feels like it's a much better option than sitting and facing this pain. But sitting and facing the big emotional pain that you're avoiding might be a sense of, I wasted my life. It might be a sense of, fear of the future. It might be a sense of, I fear that I'm unlovable. It could be all manner of things. I mean, it basically all comes back to a fear of death and a fear of being exposed. And being exposed meaning, like, for many of us, the ego, the impersonal survival mechanism, one of its core beliefs is, I'm not deserving of love. And if they find that out about me, I'll get cast out of a tribe and die. And a tremendous amount of your maladaptive behaviors and thinking are based on those two beliefs, fear of death, ultimately. That's the kind of biggest root. But just above the fear of death is this fear of, I'm not good enough, I'm not deserving of love. And if they really see me, then they're gonna see that. Everyone's gonna see that I'm not deserving of love and I'm gonna get cast out. And you might hear this and think that sounds absurd, but keep in mind that this was a belief that was formed by a version of you that was 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. So yeah, you got to face that. Only in facing that can you actually go beyond the internal blockage, the procrastination, the constant rumination. That's the only way you can go beyond it. So that's the way, brother. And so times where you're flying high, hit your meditation, keep your axe sharp, don't lose your power, don't lose your momentum. And times where you're riding low, well, you need to turn inwardly and face yourself, because the life that you want is on the other side of these big emotions that you're avoiding. So hope that helps, guys. That's the essence of it. Those 4 R's, right? You're caught up. You unhook by relaxing. You return to this object and you re-smile to create that positive feedback loop and give yourself a bit of biochemical, neurochemical uplift. So that's the way. All right. Lots of love. We'll speak soon.